We are back with another IPS Film Room, taking a look at NC State, their roster for the upcoming season, several players. And as always, if you can, subscribe to the channel at Inside Pack Sports here on YouTube. I have my guy Jake McSwain with me today. And Jake, we are going to be discussing 2025 freshman Matthew Ael. I know you did a similar breakdown to him earlier where you looked at a lot of his numbers and different things like that. But today we're going to get more into his traits in this film room. How do you feel about Mr. Ael before we get started?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, he's somebody who, from a high school talent perspective at least, right? Because I think you have to view it through that lens. He has traits to his game that translate really well to the college level. And I think that when you talk about a guy who's going to be competing for a role, there's just stuff he's going to be able to do that he can ease into the game. You know, it's not like a kid who's coming in expected to handle the ball and face a ton of pressure. That's not Matthew Ael. I think he's going to be somebody who's going to be able to come in, fulfill a defined task, and be someone that can succeed early. But I'm curious to your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's funny. He was one of NC State's first commitments under Will Wade out of the transfer portal or prep. And when you initially landed him and you know his pedigree, you think, okay, this guy could potentially play a major role right away. But as NC State's filled out this roster, I think the competition is there to where I know we're going to come out of this thing really high on Matthew Ael, but I still don't know if that means he's going to definitively be a player who's going to play a major, major role for NC State this year. And when I say major role, I'm talking top 2 or 3 guy on the roster, right? I mean, I think he is a guy who could have a role in the rotation. And when you look at State's roster, hell, because it's not easy on the college level now to crack a rotation on a team that's projected to be a high-level team. And I think NC State's expecting this to be a top 25 roster.
Yeah, and I tend to agree. And I think when you look at him, it's like positional availability as well for him. Depends on how big of a role he can play. And we'll talk about it once we get into the film here in a second. But at the same time, we've talked about it on the boards, but he's called himself a point guard in interviews before. And I don't know that – I don't think, and I can be pretty sure on this, that that's not going to be where he's contributing next year for NC State.
No, I don't think so. I think NC State brought him in, and we'll get into it. His shooting ability and his ability to score the basketball. We know they've been searching for scoring here with this roster. They don't think it's finished yet as we're taping this here. There's still a couple of spots left to fill, but his upside as a shooter and as a scorer, I think, is probably what's most appealing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so let's start there. We can go ahead and hop right into the video. But I think from what you're going to expect to see with Ael is, for me, this is where he's at his best. And I'm going to pause it here because it's when his feet are really set. And we'll talk about it more in the mid-range game. But from someone who can get to their spot and really just let threes go, it's a pretty fine release. It's just a little more up and down than maybe what you see from a lot of guys who come in with the expectation to shoot the ball a ton their first year.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love his form. I love his size, his positional size. And I know one of the things that we're going to notice here a lot is the depth that he's taking these three-point shots really stands out. And so for me, when you look at the upside of him as a shooter, just in terms of spacing and different things like that, I mean, it's really, really intriguing for NC State.
Oh, yeah, and it's funny. So looking at the film here, we call that, in the high school game, it's called volleyball line range for a reason. And this is exactly why you're talking about that, because that's where he's pulling up from. And it makes the defender really guard you. And I don't know how many pick and roll situations he's going to find himself in next year, but if they stay that low or if they're guarding him and trying to help off a cutter, this is somebody who I really think, and you'll see it through here, those pull-ups are good for him. That's a shot that's within range because of how solid of a base he has. And he'll do it again here as he's going through. Again, if you're a defender, that's a tough spot to be in because you're being asked to stick with the other team's best player on the high school level. And he can get to the rim, and we'll get into that. But from right here, if you back off just a little bit and he gets his feet set, that's a pretty solid shot.
Oh, yeah. very few guys shoot it with that ease too. I mean, that's the thing is it doesn't look stressed, right? Like his jump shot looks so effortless that there's things I know you've talked about it before. You can look at a guy's percentage and it may not tell the full story one way or the other. And I think with him, you can just look at him shoot the basketball, and the expectation is he can shoot it. And it's played out that way. I mean, you look at some of the rankings here nationally for incoming freshmen. He's considered one of the top shooters in high school basketball.
Yeah. And like I said, if I'm being a little nitpicky on this, like his shot is a bit like rigid. So, like I'll just get the film going on this, but when you watch him shoot the ball, it's just a lot of like it's a lot of movement going straight up and down, but it's not like a fluid. Like he's not someone that is catching the ball off of a screen like a Scott Wood would be when you think about like the clips of him shooting the ball and he's catching the ball going to his right or left and is still able to keep himself on balance. I think so much of Abel's game is running to the spot and getting to an area where, he can put up, a lightly contested shot with 2 feet set. But that's deep, dude. Like, I mean, from where he's pulling up from, like that's beyond NBA range. I mean, from where he's just pulling up from at high school level.
Yeah, contested. It's still contested. And like the spacing a guy like that's going to provide once he gets a reputation, right? And I think that's where you've got to play him because you want him to be able to help out your offense with his shooting ability. But you're right. I think right now he's best as a stationary shooter, a spot-up guy. I mean, ideally, you could start him out. I don't know where you're out on this. I think ideally if you could have him start out as kind of a 3-and-D wing and you really not ask a lot of him in terms of off the dribble shot creation or playmaking, and you can kind of ease himself into a larger role. I think that's the hope with him because if you can just think about having him and Paul McNeil as floor spacers with this offense, right? It's just catch and shoot options. That's where you're looking to maybe, I think, build a foundation with him, and then you just kind of build on it as a player.
Yeah, and I wanted to pull up this clip here for a second because I think it's going to be what really defines his role next year. So this one right here, like this is him running the wing on a defensive stop, and like he's gonna live and breathe this next year, catching it, catching it in transition when you have a guy in front of you who's pulling the defense to the rim, and just getting wide open looks. Like that's somewhere where he could be, 45 or 40 to 45% shooter on just wide open wing catching looks. Because if you don't guard him, then you're going to have some trouble.
And it's an aggression to take it, right? I think he understands that's his role. I'm hoping that NC State kind of tries to build his confidence by letting him know that's his role. But it's not I don't think it's a secret. I mean, they expect him to come in and be able to shoot the basketball. Shooting is his biggest strength right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's so translatable. Like you understand what you're getting from that. Like the line moves back some, but you alleviated that concern by watching him shoot the ball from where he's shooting it from. Like that's right. Not moving the line back a foot and a half isn't going to bother him whatsoever. So I think when you look at shooting, like it's something that obviously carries over to the college game. So then we move into talking about his mid-range abilities, right? And this is where things get dicey for me. And I think a lot of it ties back into what he was asked to do on the high school level. So looking at him taking some of these shots, it'll be a mixed bag. Like for me, the biggest determining factor of how successful he's going to be, if this is going to be part of his game, is being really decisive with 1 or 2 dribbles. So if he gets to a spot, it's fine. But I mean, that one right there, like you can't get to one dribble within the 3-point line and then pull up with that level of contest kind of fading away. Like it's just not going to – I don't think there's really ever a world in which that's going to be a highly competitive shot for him.
No, I hope that was a late in the shot clock shot, right? Like I can't see if they're playing shot clock here.
Like
yeah, I can't tell if they are. I doubt it. But that's my point is it's not a good shot, right? And I think that's where I'm with you in terms of what's his upside offensively. Like there's not a lot of wiggle to his game off the dribble, right? There's not a lot of like twitchiness in terms of just with his handle. It seems to be very one dribble, two dribble, pull up, get to his spot, or rip and get to the basket all the way for a finish, which is fine. Like that's the majority of guys his size probably coming into college basketball, right? Because let's be honest here, when you're 6'5" playing high school basketball, a lot of times you're not giving the freedom to be this one-on-one, get to the basket, playmaker type guy. You're typically typecast. You know this, especially if you're a public school player. You start under the basket as a big, then you work your way out and see if you can catch and shoot threes. And now you're trying to add in the one dribble pull up. So I think that's where your hope is he can maybe add more to his game. But if not, Jake, that's a lot of 6'5", 6'6" players right now, right on the college and even the next level. They become catch and shoot, rip and drive, or one dribble pull up guys.
Yeah, and especially when you are the guy in high school, right? Like I'm sure there are just times when you need a bucket and their play call as a coach is give the ball to Matthew Ael because that's our best bet. We could draw up something for anybody, but if we just get the ball in this guy's hands, he'll be able to make something happen. So as we continue to go through just the film of it all, like there'll be some that are I'm going to wait for a good example of like what success looks like for him when he's attacking and trying to get to the mid-range. So like that's another one where he might make it, but it's still fading out, like he's not getting to a spot. But when he's able to, like right there, that's like he misses that one. But for me, like that's success, and that's what you're looking for, because just like the small nuanced differences, they're in a zone here, and what he's able to do is get his man kind of rocking back, and that's a clean look. Like that contest I'm fine with because he's got his feet set, he's at the rim, and he's looking to make something happen, which is completely fine. And then off a pick and roll, I think that's another real bad one. You can just see the difference on that fadeaway when he's trying to rise up that much. Like, that's just an incredibly difficult shot. I think in that you're fine with that one when he's in transition. Like that's a kind of an NBA move where more kids are shooting that shot now in basketball than ever, and it's a little frustrating to see. That's another just good example of he can't. Like that's one that you have to eat. Like you're trying to get to your spot, and I know that little mid-post area guys love shooting it, but when you don't create enough separation, it just becomes an issue of you're going to get too much of a contest right there. That's
yeah. And I think he needs more. Like a lot of these is like I think again this is where you transition him from high school to college, right? In high school, he's probably having to play a lot more earlier with the ball in his hands. Whereas in on the next level, if he's playing the wing, the corner, he can use the gravity of the basketball to create some angles that he's just not getting right now, right? And so that's where I think you're seeing the inability to kind of get that extra separation. Your hope is in college with ball movement and player movement, you're going to help him out a little bit there to where he can get more creation, right? Because I don't think right now he's at the point where you want to be starting possessions with the ball in his hand and saying, go get a shot, right? Yeah. But if you move it 2 or 3 times and it rotates to him and he can kind of use that ball movement to get a step on a defender, now he's a different player.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think for him, the mid-range game is the only glaring spot within his game that I think needs to improve. We'll get into in a second when he gets to the rim. I think he's really good getting to the rim. But for me, his game in college is going to be, initially at least, like to your point earlier, is he's going to get the ball and you're either going to shoot the shot because you're open or you're going to get closed out on too hard and you take 1 to 2 dribbles to try to get to the rim. Now, where you talk about can he take a next step is when he's able to do more and have a counter to his counter. And then that's what we really start to see when we get into plays like this. So if he's able to attack the rim, he's a strong kid too, by the way, and we'll get into that more when he's getting to the rim. But create space like that, like if you can get to that spot and get that shot off consistently, that's more of a game changer for you. Or like just taking 1 or 2 dribbles is fine, but when you start taking 5 or 6, that's when you get into shots like that where it's too much. And I think a lot of it's going to come down to can he adjust to college defense in the college game and having guys around him that are, more equals and peers to him from a talent standpoint. That's going to be a big thing for me.
And it's not I don't think it's like this damning critique. I think that's good basketball, right? Like, you think about it, 95% of basketball players you don't want taking 4 or 5 dribbles within a half court possession.
Yeah.
Right. So us saying that his game's not at the point where you're comfortable with him doing that, or you'd want him to, that's almost every player on the court.
Yeah. Minus 1 or 2.
Right. You don't want to have over dribbling. And so that's not like a total critique on him. It's just when you start getting into that 4, 5, 6 dribble phase, I mean, that's for a lot of guys. It's like, hey, it's time to move the ball versus let's force a tough one, because nothing's changed defensively to really help you out there.
Yeah. And then so when we move back into the clips, this is where you, I think, can start to get pretty excited as an NC State fan. So, like, we talked the 1 or 2 dribbles and getting to the rim.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's through contact and through traffic. Like, that, like, just take a look at that still frame right there. He's taken a lot of contact right there and is still able to get the ball up and score. Now, I don't know how that didn't get a foul call, but I guess we'll live with it.
But even on that one, that's one I'm talking about where the ball movement helped him. Right, like the kick out from the perimeter drive allows him to rip, and now he's got to step on defender, which helps him out. And to your point, with his strength and athleticism, when he gets that downhill momentum, he's tough. Right, he's tough at the rim because of how physical he is and how big he is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's not an isolated incident. Like, you look at, there's a lot more clips. Like, here's him just getting his own rebound.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to get back and get to the rim. And he's crafty around there. He can be crafty. He can be powerful. Like, I love, him crashing the glass a little bit too. I saw more of that than maybe what ended up in this clip package towards the end. But, like, this is just a great example of, I'm going to be stronger than you. Take this initial contact, get the little wraparound hook in there, and then you don't have help, so I'm going to, like, dunk it at the rim. And we'll talk about this, but it's underrated, the ability to finish above the rim with both hands, one-handed.
Yep.
Like that, a lot of guys can't do that very well,
Mm-mm.
and he's shown that he can do that here, or at least in the few clips that we'll see.
Yeah, he can definitely finish with his left hand, and you're right. You don't see that a ton.
Mm-hmm. So, like, as we just continue to go through this, I think you'll see it on both ends. Like, and I don't know why it's from the left side he's getting there. I think I wasn't paying attention on the clips where he was shooting the ball, but I think he's right-handed. But he can definitely get to the rim and finish with that left. That's going through contact, gets the and one there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's strong. Like, and when I say he's strong, this is what I'm talking about. Like, multiple layers of the defense, and I get it. We're talking about high school basketball here, but going through a guy who's coming from the help side on your off-ball hand can be problematic, and it can be really hard, especially as you're having to come back through them. Like, on this shot, he needs to finish with his right. I guess he could have finished with his left at the rim there, but if you're going to come back and go through the contact, that's how you have to do it. I like the off-ball cuts. I like seeing that because I think that's in college, that translates more to when we talk about a roll. That's what you're going to do.
Yep.
And if you have guards that can get him the ball, I think you could see a substantial amount of that next year. He does dunk more left-handed than right-handed. I haven't seen a right one yet, but I know I did when I was watching his film more broadly than this.
Yeah, it feels like he plays a lot on the left side of the rim too, which is a little different.
Who do you compare him to? So we've watched the clips that we have on him for today. Who do you compare Matthew Ael to that might have been at State?
A little, like, I'd say a bouncier Devin Daniels in terms of getting to the rim, because I always valued Daniels' strength, right, in terms of how he was physical on the ball. He could get to the rim and finish. I didn't think he had to bounce look, Devin Daniels could jump. Like, he had some finishes, right? But I think Abel is more vertical in his jumping ability than Devin was. But I think they're similar players in terms of how they drive.
That's a good comparison. Honestly, it really is.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, just in terms of the shooting, I thought Devin, if you remember, it felt like his jumper wasn't as vertical, like it was a little more flat footed. And so that's where I would say they're also a little different. Is Abel just gets such good lift on his jump shot, which when you're shooting with the range he is, you have to, right? I mean, you're not
Mm-hmm.
shooting that without the lift he has. But I mean, I think his jumper just continued to me. It's going to be his calling card.
Yeah.
Like if you're State and you're saying, how do we find a role for him right away, whether it's 8 to 12 minutes a night. I know one guy we're high on is Jerry Dean in terms of shooting the basketball. I think Abel's right there with you. Even I would say even above Paul McNeil, Jake. I don't know where you're at. Like I think I value both of those guys as shooters probably more than Paul right now. But I also think Paul can do a little more,
Yeah.
with the handle and off the dribble as just a pure scorer. I think that's where I'm not as like to the moon high on Abel. Like I don't view him as a pure scorer right now, just because I don't think that twitchiness is there off the dribble that you want to see in a guy you can say go get a bucket for.
Yeah.
But he
I
can
don't
still
think
that
he's
doesn't
there.
now guys like that can still score points now, right? Like he can still score points.
Mm-hmm. And you talk about the space that NC State's kind of out there, and what they're going to be able to do with some of their bigs that we've already covered, and the space that they're going to operate down low. That opens things up for a guy like Matthew Ael. And if he can be that
Mm-hmm.
guy who's running the wing in transition, and he's being a pressure release for whatever post or paint touch point guards, a lot of P's in that sentence, that NC State's going to have, like he could get a substantial amount of looks from those opportunities, right? So for me, it's the biggest question, and we didn't watch a lot of clips on this because I don't value defensive clips on the high school level all that
Yeah.
much. But what's going to get him the most playing time is his ability to fill the D portion of that 3-and-D player. And I think he has all the physical tools to do it. Like his lateral quickness is fine when he's dribbling the ball. He's a little stiffer than I think you maybe would expect to see from such a high caliber shooter and creator and athlete. But I think if he can play good, solid team defense, he fills a spot that NC State, maybe it's that Terrence Arsenault to his game. And I think it's going to be really interesting to have him on the same team as Terrence for a year, because I'm sure there's a lot he can pick up from him. I mean, they got a similar kind of archetype to their game, with Abel having more of that scorer type of upside.
Well, I think with Will Wade and his staff, there's no doubt you're going to have to be able to defend to get on the court. And I think it's not as easy as it may sound, right? I mean, you think about last year, Jake, Paul McNeil did not play early because of his defense, I think, in a lot of ways. He wasn't ready to lock in, or didn't lock in totally on that end. And it hampered, I thought, now, I think we both probably differ. I would have just thrown Paul out there anyways and said, hey, figure it out, because you've got one of the highest ceilings on our roster and we need you to be a guy by the end of the season. I don't think NC State's going to have to do that with Matthew Ael this year.
No.
You think back, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, pre-transfer portal, you maybe would have needed to. If you were Will Wade and you came in and you're I mean, let's think about it. It's funny. Like, you'd probably be saying Matthew Ael might have been State's biggest pickup 10 years ago. And you would have needed him to play a major role right away, where you throw him out there in his sink or swim, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the defensive end, and you just got to live with it. Whereas now, I don't think you have to do that. So for him, he's going to have to really show he can defend, I think, to carve out a major role. They don't have to play him. You mentioned Arsenault. Obviously, we know there's guys like Alan Breed and Quadir Copeland, who I'm sure Wade's already comfortable with defensively, that can play on that wing. We know you have Paul as an option. I think it's going to me. I don't know where you're at on this. We've talked some about Paul. We'll probably do one of these on him as well. But I don't know if I can see both of those guys having a big role this upcoming year. Just with where the roster's at and where the number's at, like, I don't know if I can see that, especially if they fill it out the way you think they're hoping to, by adding another guy like potentially a PJ Haggerty.
Mm-hmm.
Are the minutes going to be there to where you can say both Paul McNeil and Matthew Ael are going to play big roles? I wonder if they're going to be competing for one.
Yeah, well, it feels like they're going to be competing for a similar type of role. Now, to me,
Mm-hmm.
where the question marks come in is, how does NC State play, or how does that rotation end up looking? Because you could go, we've talked about it on podcasts and other things on the site, but if they play smaller, more consistently, then you'll have more minutes for those 6'5" to 6'7" wing players, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it just boils down to, do they stick traditional and have two bigs on the court? And you could argue that with Jerry Ding, that's, not really an issue because he can fill both of those kind of archetypes by just playing him a lot. So I think it's just going to be an interesting thing to watch, especially over the first few weeks of the year, is how often do they change up lineups even mid-game? Like, do they start a lineup with two traditional bigs, and then as you go through some like 2 or 3 substitutions, you might end up with a lineup of a Holloman and potentially a Haggerty, Arsenault. You maybe have 2 guards, but then where it is an Ael and a McNeil on the court at the same time with an Mbaya. And you let, McNeil, who has probably a little more length, try to stick with bigs or a power forward. Because I just think we've talked about it so much, like the lack of traditional bigs, especially at that 4 spot in college basketball. It's like, what are you maybe rebounding a little bit, but if you have a guy who I think is a dominant rebounder in Mbaya, do you roll the dice and just tell everybody else, try to stay between your man and the ball and let Mbaya eat? You know what I mean? I think you just have some interesting potential and options there.
Yeah, you should. Ultimately, for me, with Ael and probably Paul as well, my thing is I think these guys are maybe a year away. And hopefully they understand that part of the process. We've talked a lot about this. I mean, in this era of college basketball, man, it's hard expecting freshmen to come in and play major roles. And so with the way this roster is built, and you're looking at several guys who could potentially be one-year dudes, when you're talking about potentially a Haggerty, an Allen Breed, a Quadir Copeland, we know he's done at the end of the year. We know Holloman's done at the end of the year. Could you be setting yourself up to where you're saying, okay, well, maybe the backcourt of the future or our 2 and 3 moving forward is Ael and McNeil, but that's just a year away, right? And so that's my hope with them, because now, again, it's going to take buy-in. It's going to take commitment. You know how it is. This thing's viewed kind of as a year-to-year deal. And it's, I'm sure a lot of schools across the sport, they're probably frustrated, Jake, because they're investing a year into a player and then he moves on after a year, right? You think about North Carolina and Ian Jackson, for instance. I'm sure they probably didn't think when they signed him, he'd be going to St. John's in year 2, right? I mean, all the time they invested with him. So your hope is that the player and the staff are all on the same page. But that doesn't mean he can't come in and play a big year right now. I just think with what State's done, I've been so impressed with how they've constructed this roster. I've made like a total 180 on Ael from when they first got him. And first thinking, okay, this guy potentially could start in year 1, to now I'm saying, what is he, a back end of the rotation piece until proven otherwise. And maybe he comes in and just hits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's you leave yourself options. And it all boils down to me is if NC State's really good next year, which I think the potential is there for them to have a really, really strong year, then this becomes less of an issue. And you maybe can play more guys, especially early on and even through the ACC slate, where you can manage the load of some of these pieces that you already have and put yourself in a position to give guys more exposure and let them see the type of role that they're going to have the next year. But if you're good, then I think those problems generally can solve themselves.
Right. I agree.
Well, that's all the film. I appreciate everyone being here. I'll turn it over to James to wrap us up. But make sure you subscribe to the site if you're not already a member there. I know from looking at the stats on YouTube, over half you guys watching this aren't already over on the site. So feel free to join us over there. Lots of good discussion.
Yeah, and like Jake said, we are primarily posting our content at InsidePackSports.com. For those of you on YouTube, make sure you go and check it out. We have a lot of premium content over there, and we're going to continue to crank out these film rooms. We have some already up on the channel. We're going to try and get through the full roster here over the course of the summer. So, yeah, today, Matthew Ael. Next time, I don't know, Jake, who you got on your mind for the next time around? Got to subscribers, let them know, let them ask.
Yeah, let them say because that's why we did this one, because somebody that was a subscriber on IPS and had mentioned they wanted Matthew Ael, and I think they put that comment on YouTube as well. So feel free to drop a comment here or on the site, and we'll listen to you guys. There you have it. Thanks for tuning in to our breakdown of Matthew Ael.